Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Zach is Cinema. Yes, Zach is Cinema is just for all those people out there that have just struggled and gotten so frustrated when you talk to someone about movies and then they hit you with the line saying, man, there's no original movies anymore. You know, Hollywood just doesn't make anything good nowadays. But then you quickly roll your eyes at them and say, well, are you gonna, see this movie that we're talking about today? And they're like, oh no, it looks stupid, I'll wait for streaming. And then it bombs in theaters, and then those same people that say Hollywood doesn't make anything original anymore just keeps complaining and then not watching it. And then you're like in your head saying, well, you're the issue, I hate you, I hate you. And you move on and keep going to the theater and keep supporting these movies. So, if that's you, if people say that to you and you just gotta like bite your tongue because there are original movies, just nobody seems to go see them. So, if you could relate here, please join me in my frustrations, because you found the right home here at ZakIsCinema. But yes, welcome. Today we're gonna be doing another movie review, so let's just hop right into it. Today we're going to be talking about the new movie called Mickey 17, which came out in 2025. For Mickey 17, the director and writer is Bong Joon-ho. I think I said that right. I'm sorry, Mr. John Ho. I tried really hard. I looked up a video beforehand this time, actually. And starring in this movie, we got Robert Pattinson, Naomi Ackie, Steven Yeun, and Toni Collette and Mark Ruffalo. So the plot for Mickey 17 follows an unlikely hero named Mickey who finds himself in the extraordinary circumstance of working for an employer who demands the ultimate commitment to his job, to die for a living. As we hop into this review, I was really interested in checking out Mickey 17. I've definitely enjoyed Robert Pattinson's later career ever since he stopped with the Twilight movies. He's starred, I feel like, in some of my favorite movies of all time. Like we got The Lighthouse, Good Time, which we just did a video on, and most recently, The Batman. And now Mickey 17 here too. So I was looking forward to this because the trailer marketing seemed very, very interesting. I love sci-fi, I love comedies, I love this director's last movie, Parasite. I was hoping it would at least be, close in quality to Parasite. So definitely really excited for this movie. That's why I went and checked it out. Yes, let's jump into the review for Mickey 17, starting with the positives or the things that I just really enjoyed about this movie. First thing that really comes to mind for me is the humor. I expected it to be wacky and over the top. I was honestly kind of surprised with how funny this movie really is. Genuinely funny and consistently funny throughout the entire runtime. I feel like there's a lot of humor within this movie and within its over-the-top nature and satirical vibe that it's going for. However, there is also just a lot of funny bits in this movie, especially with our Mickey character, as they keep sending him on these crazy missions just to die in horrendous ways, and you just see how this company is throwing this poor guy into these awful situations and he just has to go along with it. There's a lot of humorous elements, humorous scenes in those moments, and I think they did a lot of funny parts with Mark Ruffalo's character and Toni Collette's character. They're really hamming it up here. They're very wacky and over-the-top characters that led to a lot of funny scenes, especially with Mark Ruffalo. I'm always kind of mixed on Mark Ruffalo. I like a lot of his movies, but him as the Hulk just, I don't know. I know I'm not the only one to say this, but him as the Hulk just doesn't really work for me. So I was curious to see how he would do in this fun, wacky, over-the-top character, and I think he and Toni Collette really deliver. They really ham it up and lead to a lot of funny scenes with great lines, great line delivery as well. Also, speaking of the humor, every time Mickey, they show it in the trailer, but every time Mickey came out of the printing machine, me and my friend were giggling like schoolgirls every time. My friend sitting next to me, the first time he came out of the printer, he audibly went, ew, and it was just so funny because it is just so gross and uncomfortable and over the top that it almost gets that humorous reaction out of you, if that makes sense. I think it fits the vibe for this movie, and that printing bit every time they did it, they do it multiple times throughout the movie. I thought it was hilarious every time because you feel for this Mickey character, and then you see the juxtaposition of how they're treating him and reprinting him out just to go do their shit work pretty much. So a lot of funny scenes here. I loved how well this like offbeat, quirky humor felt. Like I said, I wasn't really expecting it to be super funny, but I was curious to see how the humor would work. Parasite, from what I remember, has some like funny scenes in it and some humor, but it's not a comedy. This definitely feels more comedy and sci-fi, but it reminded me a lot of how like Tim Burton writes his characters and his stories. It just felt very similar vibe, but just in an R-rated fashion, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I'm the only one, but it kind of reminded me of that dry, over-the-top humor in movies like Better Off Dead, if you've seen it. Better Off Dead, I'll probably make a video on it at some point. Fantastic movie, but it's almost a parody, satirical movie of 80s movies while being like that high school 80s movie. Not saying that this is a high school movie, but Mickey 17 felt like that. Like everyone's just over the top, but on purpose. They're all playing this satirical nature, this satirical vibe that it's going for, and it really worked for me here. I was very impressed with the writing and the humor here, with especially how well and consistent it kept landing for me. I also think here that Robert Pattinson does a fantastic job as Mickey and playing his multiple. Not a spoiler, you see it in the trailer, but I think he does a great job at making both these characters feel so different, yet at the same time you know they're the same character, they're from the same person. So I think he does a fantastic job playing both of those characters, playing that multiple role very, very well. And he does a great job with the humor, he does a great job with the more serious scenes, and he just brings a lot of lightheartedness and fun to this movie in his performance. This is definitely not a low budget movie. I was actually kind of surprised when I looked it up, just seeing its opening box office, and I'm like, oh, well, I wonder what the budget is. 118 million? I don't know why they gave this movie that big of a budget, but 118 million is a fuck ton of money. Obviously, it's a lot of money compared to a lot of big budget sci-fi movies like this, especially recently. It is sitting a little bit more reasonable, but I think for this big sci-fi movie, the effects look fantastic. There's big set designs that look amazing as well, and it just kind of makes you wonder where like the budget went for movies like the Flash or like Black Widow, like stuff like that, when they're sitting at around that same budget and you get a movie like Mickey 17 that looks fantastic. Everything holds up super, super well. And then just looking at other movies around the similar budget or maybe even a little bit more that just can't hold up those effect standards. So I was impressed with this movie just on a visual level as well. I also really enjoyed the story here. It's like I said, it's a sci-fi comedy movie that feels very, very original. And I think that's such a big positive for me nowadays. It's not an IP movie. It's not a sequel. It's not a prequel. There's not 16 other Mickey movies. Like, it's just Mickey 17, and it's a one-off original movie. And I think that's a big positive and something I like to point out in newer movies coming out today. So I think it does the difficult thing of borrowing elements from other movies, other sci-fi movies, yet stands out on its own. And I love seeing, big budget original movies being made. And this is a prime example of one. Next here, I think this is just a fun movie. I felt invested watching it, and it was a great theater experience as well, at least with my theater. Everyone shut the hell up. No one was on their phones. Everyone was watching, having a good time with it, laughing at the scenes you're supposed to be laughing at, being quiet during the scenes you're supposed to be quiet at. It felt like a fun community kind of experience here, and those theater experiences are so rare. So just with a fun movie like this, I feel like I really also appreciated how everyone else around me kind of responded to it, and I think that's also a big positive to the movie, that you had a whole theater, in today's day and age, fully invested in this movie. Next here, kind of jumping off like the comedy, the tone. I like how unashamed the tone and vibes are in this movie. It's so over the top. You have to be either on the train or off the train at the beginning of the movie when you start watching it, because it's so unapologetic with its tone. And I feel like that just gave me a deeper love for Mickey 17 here. Try to find another word than over the top, but it is everything. The story's over the top, all the characters and writing are over the top. So if you like that type of tone and vibe, I think this movie is a fantastic example of it. It doesn't hold back with its characters or lines or writing or anything. So I really appreciated that here. And I think speaking of its over the top tone, I think the movie does a good job at not coming off as preachy with its messages. Because with a tone like this, it could get preachy, or just with the subject matter that the movie's exploring, it could very, very easily get preachy. There's definitely messages and themes that are easy to pick up on. Like, I don't think it's trying to hide anything, but it never just like has a character sitting down preaching to a character and its audience. It's nothing like that, but I think they do a good job at making those messages and themes very prevalent without it getting too preachy, because it still felt like our world, just in a distant future, but it's almost funny and scary at the same time with how realistic you could see something like that happening. But I appreciate that they didn't take that opportunity to just like preach and talk down to all of us. At least I didn't feel like that when I was watching the movie. I think the movie has a lot of messages here, obviously about power, the rich, lower class workers, and economic inequality. Again, it's impressive that it just never felt preachy to me. You kind of know that going in from the trailer, and Mickey here, he's literally an expendable. So again, they're saying these lower class workers are expendable. So it's stuff like that. Like, it doesn't go preachy with it, but with just its over the top nature, like calling lower class workers expendables, you're like, okay, I'm picking up on the messages here. You don't need to go further, and the movie respects that and doesn't go further. So I really enjoyed that. And lastly here, I think like any good sci-fi movie, it just poses a lot of interesting questions, a lot of interesting ideas that get you thinking when you're watching it, and then well after you're done watching it, leaving the theater. They introduced something very interesting that's been sticking in my mind recently since I've seen this, with the case of the multiples. It's a primary plot point in the movie when you got Mickey and he becomes a multiple, and multiples are illegal in this world. And they pose a lot of questions with that, like saying like, well, how would we prosecute multiples? You get a multiple that does a crime, and they're still the same soul. It's still the same person. So do we punish each of them? Do we just punish one of them? When we punish both of them, do they each just get half the sentence, or do they both get the sentence? If we only punished one, then what do we do with the other? So there's a lot of just like very interesting questions in a sci-fi movie like this, and I like how it left me, just kind of thinking of it well after I left the movie, and I think that's always a big positive when you got with any movie, honestly. Let's jump into the negatives here. Now, I'll preface this that I feel like it's difficult to talk about this movie, not only spoiler-wise, but I think it's just definitely one that I want to and need to rewatch. It's a long movie. There's a lot of stuff in here that I just feel like I need a proper rewatch in order to figure out some of my points here. But just a preface like that, I don't think these are major negatives, at least on my first time watch. But again, I could see this movie kind of going up or down for me based on how I feel about it after watching it again. My first negative here is I do think the movie is just a little bit too long. It drags for a bit in the middle, and they spend a lot of time showing us like what they showed in the trailer, like he dies, he comes back, they reprint him, stuff like that. So there's a lot of that in the middle that it was fun and interesting to watch, but since he's kind of doing the same thing, it does kind of get stuck in that repetitiveness a little bit. And then at the end, again, no spoilers here, but as they're wrapping things up, they go on this little like side quest with a 5 to 10 minute dream scene flashback thingy, and it just felt very out of place. It was the only time they ever introduced this element in the movie, and again, it just tacked on another like 5, 6, 7 minutes to the movie that I don't think it needed to be there. So again, this movie's coming in almost at 2 hours and 20 minutes. You could have easily cut this down to under two hours, like sitting at that 150 to 2 hours. Like there's easily like 20, 25 minutes you could chop out of this movie. It drags a little bit, but I never felt bored or just wanting the movie to hurry up, if that makes sense. Next here, the love story, I'm a little mixed on. As of now, for this first time watch, I just thought they would do a little bit more with the relationship aspect. I think they have fantastic chemistry. I thought they were going to do a little bit more, especially when the multiples got got introduced, they kind of play it off as a joke and do some funny things with it that were funny and interesting, but I thought it might spin it and lead it to more of the dramatic side of the movie. But they don't really go that direction, so curious to see how I feel about that on rewatch. But I think that kind of leads into my last negative here is with the ending. Again, I wonder if, as I'm like talking about these, if these are more like mixed negatives for me, because they don't totally derail the movie, just little things that I'm left with here. But with the ending, I was hoping for a little bit more of an emotionally impactful ending. I thought they could do a lot more with the multiples and the conflicts that led to that, and I thought it would lead to more of a bittersweet kind of sad ending as well. However, the movie kind of wraps up in a way that just felt like overly simple and a little too neat for a movie of this size and everything going on. It just kind of, it wrapped up exactly how I thought it would be, and I'm just left there like, oh, okay, like, yeah, no, that's a good ending. It makes sense. It just kind of felt too neat, like a proper bow for all the crazy and wacky stuff with this. I thought the multiples, when they introduced them, I thought they would be this more dramatic side to the movie, but the movie doesn't choose that route. It chooses to stick with the tones that it's going for throughout the rest of the movie here. So I don't know. I think they could have done a little bit more to make it more impactful or emotionally satisfying to me, or I think they could have just made it a little bit more dramatic and, like I said, maybe more of a bittersweet, maybe a sacrifice towards the end or something like that to really bring it all home. They don't do that, and it kind of plays out exactly how you're expecting, and I'm like, oh, like, that's good. I do like it. It's just I was left like, I wanted a little bit more there. If you've seen the movie, I think you know what I'm kind of talking about, unless it's just me. I would say overall, this is a very, very fun, wacky, very funny, satirical sci-fi movie that lived up to my expectations. It's definitely one of my favorite Robert Pattinson movies going on that list for me, and I think you should definitely go out and support this original movie because, like I hinted at the beginning, it's not looking good box office score and money wise, unfortunately. For my rating for this movie, I have it as I would look to own this movie when it comes out. I'd pay full price for it. I want to get the 4K here to add to my collection because of how much I enjoyed it and how much I already want to rewatch it. So you guys have my thoughts here on Mickey 17. Let me know down below. Did you see Mickey 17? Did you hear about it? What were your thoughts on it? You know, let me know down below if this is a movie you're going to be rewatching or revisiting, or how it stacks up to this director's previous work as well. That's about it here. Thank you so much for watching ZakIsCinema. I appreciate anybody watching my videos here, so thanks again. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.